Alright, in this video I just want to cover some Mac OS X, Snow Leopard and possibly Lion stuff to speed up a workflow for a web developer or a web designer. And there's just a few things I've come across that have just speeded up my general what I can do with work and just makes it so much easier to work on projects. So the first thing you can see in this window is I've got project folders and I'm using BB Edit, and with that if I just click on my most recent project, which is the JFusion MRBS plugin. Whoops. So you notice when I click that project folder I've got all the files relevant, and I've also sorted them into collections. So I've got the plugin that's on the MAMP side, so the files that I want to test on a live site, the files on a cloud server or a backup place, which is GitHub, and on my local Git, which is basically a place where I've put my own versioning system for all the different versions of these files. So that's the first thing, using project files, because obviously just click one file once and you have access to all your files relevant to a project. The second one, which I briefly mentioned then, is versioning, in particular Git, because obviously when you make even small changes to files, if you keep versioning it every time you make a new commit or just a general change, it's going to be a lot easier to revert back to a change if something goes wrong, and you'll be able to see exactly what you changed if you are using GitHub, or if you're using terminal and using git log and just checking through. And with GitHub as well, GitHub, even though you'll obviously not just store your work only on GitHub, it's a good backup source if ever your files go wrong on your computer and you've got some projects that you're hosting on GitHub, you can always re-download them. So it's a good backup as well as a place for extra space. And one thing that's tended to bug me for a while with Finder on Mac is every time I add a new file to a folder, it doesn't automatically arrange alphabetically like it does on Windows. So, well, by default, but you can change that instead. So you just click on Show View Options, and on here normally it's selected to none, but if you change this to name and click Users Defaults, then it will always arrange most of your folders just by alphabetically. And if you move a file as well, you can see on most Macs you can drag a file and it'll stay where you move it to, but on this it automatically aligns everything to save space. It just makes it a lot more efficient and easier to find stuff when it's always alphabetical and all your files are in one place rather than one file being right over here. So next thing is using gitignore for your versions projects. So you can see on this folder, I've got several folders with files in for my projects with the different versions, and then I've got a project file, but I've started moving the project files into the actual project folder, such as this one, so you can see it there. And this makes it, obviously, if I move all these project files into the folders, I'll have more space to see more projects, and I won't get as lost trying to search for things because there'll be less things to search for. And if I just want to open a project file, I'll just click on the folder relevant and I'll be able to see only one project file and just be able to click on it. So to do that, this uses the GitHub Mac app as well. This is the way I'm going to approach it. Let's say I want to do it with this one. Simply drag that into the relevant folder, click on GitHub, and let me just double check which. So that one was Glipped, which is a project where I was actually ironically porting Git to a PHP software. If I just click on this, and you can now see it's asking me to commit these to master. And these files, I don't actually want them included in the Git projects because these files aren't going to be versioned because they're just references to my files. And it's just a management tool, it don't really need to be, I don't need to keep track of versions. So what I'm going to do, ignore this code, I'm going to mention this soon. I'm just going to note down these files that it's asking me to include. So just blipped bb project d. Apologise, I have to keep switching windows here. There's no other option because it won't let you copy the text directly. Slash project bb data. I've spelled that wrong. I'm just going to duplicate this because the other file's similar. So the only difference on this is it's just got the user, the folder of the user of this computer, and it's called project settings instead of project data. So so you just want to copy these into excuse me. Click on settings for the repository you're on, and in this ignored files.gitignore bit, you just want to paste these in. Click save changes, and now you can see those two disappear, and it's replaced with the gitignore file. And it's still asking you to commit to. Obviously, you're going to change the. This is going to be a new commit now that you've got this file created. And I'm just going to quickly check something actually. I'm going to check because there's a general phrase I use to explain. This is it. This is the normal thing I write for commits, that is just creating this ignore file for, well, it kind of explains itself, add ignore file for development software files, so just whatever project management system you're using, so add that there. Commit changes, and then just put it up to GitHub, just click sync branch. Ignore what I just did on terminal, that's nothing to do with what I just did. It's not needed, I was just checking something. But now this will be up to date. And I can now keep, if I just go back, I can now keep this project file in that folder. And it should be fine. And it won't conflict with the Git project. So next thing I want to cover is file comparison. So what I often do is I'll first write something to be tested on a test site, which is normally just my local host MAMP installation, and I'll test code there to make sure it works or even does anything. before I commit anything to my Git repository. And when I want to commit to my Git repository, the quickest thing is to load up the file relevant to, I won't actually select the files because I've got nothing current, but you'd load up the file you just did in your localhost or just your testing web server, and the same file of that you're using in your Git repository, and you just merge the changes onto that file inside Git. And that's just a quick way of getting the file you know works because you just tested it from your testing server to your repository. So then they're both the same and it's ready to be committed. So the next thing is adding icons to folders. Now you notice on my sidebar I have a few things that are not normally on by default on macOS, which is, you can see all my web development folders, so htdocs, CGI, Rails, Node, Git, and SVN. They all have a unusual icon, which is not one you'd normally see, and they're also on the sidebar. Now for these icons, just use an icon file. So it's a proprietary file that you can, if you're searching Google, you can download different ones. And you simply put this icon inside the folder you want to change the icon of, and it'll take effect. So there's nothing else you need to do to get it to work. And to add it to the sidebar, you just get any folder you want, such as this, and you just drag it into the sidebar until you get the not this one that's dragging into a folder. When it appears like this, so it's a straight line with a circle on the left, and it just works like that. And if you want to remove it, you just right click and click remove from sidebar. So next thing, you can see here I've got a DS star file, which is Finder tends to dump these files everywhere you go, but you normally can't see them because it's a hidden file. You can tell that by the name of the file is a dot, and then preceding it is the file name, so it's got no prefix before the dot, and that tells the computer system to make it invisible. But you can view visible files by just typing this statement into terminal, which is this application here. So you just type that in here, and that will allow you to see hidden files. And if you want to reverse it, so you want to hide hidden files again, just change where it says true in this statement to false. So, and the last two things is, sorry, I'm full of cold. You can see here I've got something called Go to Shell, which is a application you can find on the App Store if you just search it. And this basically, if I just click it, this brings me terminal, but it brings it relevant to the directory I was just in Finder. So this is really good, especially if you're using Git commands through terminal. If you want to make a Git command to a certain repository, just go to the repository in Finder and just click this and it'll automatically direct you there. And you just get that from Mac App Store and you drag it onto the top, this top bar here, just like you do with the sidebar. Set you wait for that plus icon to show up, and it's just remove again the same. And one last thing you might consider, it's not as relevant as anything else, but I find it quite useful, is automatic startup and shutdown of a computer. So if you know you're going to be on a computer at a certain time of morning because you've got to set off to work, or you've got to be checking something on your computer at a certain time, you can go into System Preferences, and I believe it is account, no it isn't, sorry, energy saver, and click on schedule, and you'll notice by default none of these are ticked, but this top one will say start up or wake and the bottom one will say sleep. And if you select the top one, you can basically change what day you want the computer to start up and at what time, anytime. So I've got it normally set to 9 because I get a bit of work done in the morning before I can do anything else. And you can also select this one to get it shut down at a certain time, although that's less relevant, and obviously it can be a bit nerving when your computer shuts down at a certain time if you're possibly still working. So I'd just select the top one if you really need it. And the last thing I'm going to cover is, if I go to what I was on originally, if you click on accounts and click login items for your relevant account, you can basically start up applications automatically when you log in. And this is obviously useful if you want to get straight on with work, or maybe you use your computer for a different purpose, but there's a program that you always have open. Instead of having to click everything you want to open when you first log on, you can just get the Mac to do it automatically for you by just adding an application by clicking this plus button and choosing it from your applications folder and just selecting it and making sure it's ticked, and it will automatically be opened whenever you log in. So that's all my tips on speeding up working with web development, or even just general programming development, and I hope it helps.